Let me start. Let me start with actually the real muscle and brain power behind the Pacific Data Sovereignty Network. My colleague in arms, Dr. Malea Tongia Jacinta Falili Fidel. She's a Samoan leader, and she has a PhD focusing on Pacific child resilience pathways. She champions Pacific worldviews and self-determination and research, evaluation, and advocacy. Jacinta's diverse background includes roles at Health Research Council of New Zealand, Ministry of Health, and University of Auckland, and she's currently the Acting General Manager of Research at Moana Connect. She leads projects in health and social sectors, bridging government, academia, and Pacific communities. We also have, all the way from the proud powerhouse of Porirua, Nuali'i Aotearoa Lafayette, and she is a Samoan advocate for digital equity raised in Cannons Creek. And I'm gonna leave it there because she will talk a lot about Cannons Creek. I know she will. She co-founded the Whaiba Whale to empower Pacific people in technology and has received multiple accolades, including recognition in the Forbes 30 Under 30 for her impact initiatives such as Digi Tautua, which refurbishes devices to bridge the digital divide. But I'll let her talk and introduce herself as we go on. We're really honoured to have Keone Mahialona, who is the Chief Technology Officer for Te Huku Media. He's a key advocate for Indigenous data sovereignty. He champions projects that advance digital tools for Te Reo Māori, ensuring data is stored, shared and managed in culturally safe ways. And then we're really lucky to have also Peter Lucas Jones, who's Māori leader and CEO of Te Huku Media. He's been recognised as Time's 100 AI list for 2024 with his groundbreaking work in using artificial intelligence to revitalise and preserve Te Reo Māori while championing Indigenous data sovereignty. Under his leadership, Te Huku Media has developed AI tools for Te Reo Māori, including speech in text technology with 92% accuracy. I can't wait to hear more about that, Peter, and what you think about that for Pacific languages. I'm also really honoured to have Dr. Karaitiana Taiuru, who's a leading authority on highly accomplished visionary, actually, Māori technology ethicist and specialising in Māori rights with AI. He's particularly Māori data sovereignty and governance with emerging technology and biological sciences, and he's actually perfect for helping his Pacific cousins as we sort of navigate this ocean of AI technology together. But what I'll do is, like I said, I want to make sure that I let them introduce themselves. And so I'll pass it over to Jacinta, Dr. Jacinta Fidel, just to introduce yourselves before I hand it on to others. Jacinta.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ma lore soi fo moa malangi e mama. It is wonderful to be part of this panel, and thank you, Ivan, for introducing me first. Although I don't know why, of everybody on this panel, I do not have expertise in AI. However, my job today is to represent the Pacific Data Sovereignty Network, and I am one of the founding members alongside Ivan, who is our chair. And we had organised a workshop bringing together all of our amazing AI experts, I guess basically to bring our head out of the sand. And so we have been around for almost 5 years. So we had our first inaugural seminar back in 2019. But as Ivan mentioned, I am the Acting General Manager of Moana Research. I am Samoan and Samoan. So I do have a little bit of Irish background, so I'm part of the Scanlan Ainga, as you can tell. And my villages are Levi, Sale Imoa, Fale Ula and Sale Aula. And I am T75 hard. I grew up in Mangere. And I have 4 sons, married to a Cantabrian, Abafide, and yeah, and love the work that we do in the research space because we get to talk about these amazing emerging innovations. So wonderful to be here.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Jacinta. And I'll hand it over to Keone.
Aloha pumeana kākou no Hawaii au Keone ko uinoa ko te CTO te reo irirangi o Tiku Taika. Yeah, I guess I started my AI journey building driverless cars for MIT back in 2007. That was a long time ago, you know, way before the stuff you see these days in terms of an aspiration to have driverless cars and a lot of kōrero around, the technology being just around the corner, but I'm sure we turned that corner 100 times and the technology still isn't here. So I have a very pessimistic view on AI from a capitalist perspective, but in terms of using these technologies to help our people regain their sovereignty in the digital domain, that's where I think this technology can help us. Aloha.
Aloha ki oni. I'm just moving down my list of the gallery that I see in front of me, and Karaitiana, Dr. Karaitiana Taiuru, you're next.
Greetings, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here to share our thoughts with our Pacific cousins. So I originally hail from Canterbury. My tribal affiliations are with Ngāi Tahu down in Canterbury, Ngāti Kahungunu up the island here, and Ngāti Toa in Wellington, where I currently live. So I'm really looking forward to tonight. So thank you.
Ngā mihi Karaitiana, and now now that we've covered the South Island and half of the North Island, we'll just cover up the Norta. So Peter.
Kia ora tātou katoa, ko Peter Lucas Jones tōku ingoa. I was born in Kaitaia, which is, of course, the furthest most service town in Aotearoa in Te Hiko Te Ika. We have 47 marae in our iwi broadcasting area, and I'm the CEO of Te Reo Irirangi o Te Hiko Te Ika. We're the home of a number of remnant native speaker communities, and those are communities where intergenerational transmission of te reo Māori from one generation to the next generation continues to occur in various ways. But as a result of colonization and land alienation, language decline and cultural decline, we're faced with a lot of problems. And as we have developed our broadcasting repertoire in Te Hiko Te Ika, we decided to make available our archives for our iwi members. And we started to transcribe those, Ivan, but we quickly found out that it was going to take us a long time to transcribe 30 years of Māori language archives from native speakers, which is quite a different sort of Māori to the university style learning experience and acquisition. So we decided we would teach computers how to speak Māori. And I believe that we can share our experience with our sister language communities and perhaps design a preferred future together. Kia ora mai anō tātou.
Kia ora, Peter. Thank you very much. Inspiring. You're always inspiring when you speak, Peter. I'm looking forward to today and your input. And speaking of inspiring, we move from the north to the capital of the capital, Cannons Creek, Porirua. Aotearoa, I'll let you introduce yourself. You're far better than I am. Oh, Aotearoa, I think you're just a little bit quiet. You sound like you're underwater in...
Testing 1, 2, 3.
That's the one. Perfect.
Oh gosh, kōrero power broke through my headphones. Apologies for that, please. Malo le soifua, langi mama, CEO alofa, a fio mai, malio mai, susu mai, te tala mai a ao. My name is Nuali'i, e te roa tusi epa, Cannons Creek, kōrero 502 for all day, every day. As you can already tell, I was born and bred in the place of champions, Porirua, Cannons Creek, and yes, it is the beautiful tribal Ngāti Toa, also the capital of Tokelau, and the capital of the Cook Islands as well. So much love to all my family there. But I spent a majority of my time up here in Auckland, doing my beautiful work here with my amazing CEO who's joining us, Julia Arnonini, where we have not only just built but birthed Whaipa Whale to be our home for our Pasifika people in tech. And really, our mission really at the beginning was to bring more of our people in tech, but really it's evolved in the years that we've evolved as well. And that really is not only to bring more in tech, but also for them to be self-determining. this talanoa is so amazing. I'm so excited. One, because we're not scared to talk about this, but two, we're going to run it straight for today. So I'm very excited, not only for this talanoa, the panel, and the audience that are tuning in today. But I tell you, lava, let's get into it. Yeah, over to you, Ivan.
Thank you. And as you can see from those introductions, we have got some superstars online today. And so this is a really, yeah, I'm looking forward to this as well. I'm looking forward to learning lots as well as guiding the session today. I've got a set of questions that we've pre-written around this that I'm going to invite speakers to speak about. We're really lucky that plenty of the speakers were at our last event and so can speak to a lot of that sort of stuff. But we've also got some new thinking from the likes of Keone, who will come and speak from his point of view. I think, but what I want to remind people is that we want to keep it interactive as possible. You've all got the chat there, and we've got our team that are looking at that chat, and they'll be putting their hands up, and they'll be so we'll be adding in questions from the audience as they come in, which may be risky, but not for us, because actually I've got enough people in here that know they've probably forgotten more about stuff than I know, and so this is yeah, so we're in a really good position. So I really want to be interactive and have the opportunity for people to interact with some of these superstars that you don't often get to all in one room at the same time. So this is a really important part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the first question, and let's see what people think about this question. Actually, I'm going to ask directly to actually Dr. Kaitiana Taiuru about this. So the first question is, so how can AI technologies be utilised to enhance data collection and analysis for Pacific people?
Oh, great. I get the hardest question first. I appreciate that. Thank you. Yep. Well, I think probably the first thing would be to make sure that you're using AI that's not owned by an American company. And I think we can easily fall into that trap of using all the big names for our technology. So I think looking at whether it's open source or some way to make sure that you actually own the data that's being analysed and collected is helpful. I think for me, I really dislike the fact when I see my Ngai Tahu, for example, having to pay someone to do exactly that, collect and analyse our data, and our money is actually going offshore, and that's really frustrating for me. So I think, yeah, being aware of that, trying to take control at a local level of the data, making sure that you keep the ownership of that data, your sovereignty, being involved with the rule making. Don't let someone else come into your communities, into your villages, and tell you how to do things. Be confident and say, no, this is our cultural practice, and this is what we want to do, and then to do that. I think it's probably fair to say that the technology is still growing, and it might not be realistic for some islands, and it's quite difficult for a lot of people in New Zealand as well. But yeah, I think we need to be staunch for our traditional knowledge, and probably also just question: does our knowledge, our traditional knowledge, doesn't need to be digitized right now, or do we just need to make sure we give it to our children and our grandchildren and wait till it is safe to use AI to do those things?
Valid question. I think you've raised some really good points there, Kaitiana, and particularly the conversation around how do you allow technology to come in and work with your thousands of years of history and language. And I think two really good people to speak about this, because I think they've done it, is Peter Lucas-Jones and Keone. So I might hand it over to Peter just to comment on, well, how does it enhance collection and then analysis and then possibly use?
I think there's a couple of things in there. There's the data that we can collect from our own whānau hapu and iwi, those people that are our closest relatives, and that corpus gathering type exercise. I believe it needs to be encouraged and guided by our values and principles. And so it's important that the kaupapa is set first, and that those values and principles are understood and supported by the elders or the kaumātua and kuia of the community. Secondly, there's repatriation of data. So as we know in the GLAM sector, galleries, museums, and libraries, for many of the members of our nu'u or our villages or our iwi that are alienated from language and culture and want to reconnect with identity, sometimes those reconnection points include institutions that do not share the values and principles that we do. And so I think part of the answer is actually clearly defining the problem that we seek to address. One is repatriation of data and making that data accessible to enhance the decision making that we make as leaders in our whānau, in our families, leaders in our ainga, leaders in our ohana, because that's an important point I would like to reference. AI provides an opportunity for us to enhance access to information. And those could include discovery agents, for example. And when we think about whānau that have been alienated as a result of adoption or being forcibly removed from their families and relocated into state care, sometimes those mokopuna grow up not knowing where they come from. And when I think about that, I'm reminded that 86% of the members of my iwi, Te Aupōuri, Ngai Takoto, Te Rarawa, Ngāti Kahu, Ngāti Kuri, do not reside in our traditional rohe. And as a result of that, the access to language and culture, for example, is limited, particularly if someone has not grown up with a native speaker in their home or having access to natural examples of te reo Māori. In our experience, we are corpus gathering every day, interviewing our elders, our kuia and kaumātua in te reo Māori, gathering information from the members of our community, but doing that in a way that reflects kaitiakitanga. And when I say kaitiakitanga, I say it from a perspective of somebody from Te Hiku o Te Ika, and the fact that we have a huge collection of native speaker archives, and we continue to build on that. And our values and principles guide us in the way that we gather that corpus, Ivan. So relationships, in my view, are probably the most important things to get right at the beginning. Acknowledging the relationships between generations, the relationships that grandchildren have with their grandparents, the relationships that grandparents have with parents, and of course mokopuna, and understanding the roles that we respect in our families, our hapu, and of course our iwi. Translating that, of course, into a practice that is documented, I think is best done by considering the practice we have always done. We have stored data in our language for hundreds, if not thousands of years, and language is the key to culture. So when we think about data and how it's being mined by corporations, they want the keys to a culture that also has commercial value. They have taken all our land, and now they are coming for our culture too. And this is something that I'm reminded of, because when we're landless in this world, we think, how do we build digital real estate for our whānau, hapu, and iwi in the future, raising our economic situation while we address other problems at the same time? I hope my answer has somewhat gone to respond to your question. Nō reira, tēnā koe, Ivan.
No, I think it has. Because I'm really interested, because there's probably listeners on here that are going, well, how do you do that, Peter? And I think a great person to ask that is, or have you, I'd be interested in your thoughts, Kioni, given that you're the Chief Technology Officer and your primary role, I'm guessing, is, these are some of the principles and some of the things that that Peter's outlined. Well, then how does it become practice in a digital world?
Yeah, you just have to do it. Just got to do it, eh? Do the hard work, do the mahi, do the hana. Yeah, and that's what that's what we've done. I mean, it wasn't easy, but I mean, it's as simple as that, is set your mind to it and get it done. What's important is that we are in control of the technology that we build. We're in control of the infrastructure that runs it. We determine how the technology should and how it shouldn't be used, who should use it and who shouldn't use it. And that's a key part of this digital sovereignty. If we allow foreign entities to create language tools for our Indigenous languages, they decide who gets to use those and how they ought to be used. And in some cases, it is for the mining and extraction of our cultural knowledge, our mātauranga, and there is commercial value to that, as we've seen, with cultural appropriation, et cetera, et cetera. So that's really been the key for us. One is find a specific problem that any one technology or a collection of technology can solve, and build the solution to solve that key problem. For us, as Pete mentioned, it was building automatic speech recognition in Te Reo Māori, which didn't exist at the time, and no one was going to build it for us, so we just had to do it ourselves. We benefit a lot from open source software, and a lot of amazing people out there who share their work. We're riding the wave of, I guess, innovation in terms of machine learning research that's being done in creating these types of AI. They're not really artificial intelligences, but they're definitely artificial. We're riding the wave of the innovation that these tech companies are sharing, which is interesting, because you wonder why a for-profit corporation wants to open source a large language model. Well, I guess if they've taken the data of the world, perhaps they feel some ethical reason to give everyone access essentially to models trained off of their own data. But what sets us apart is the values that we hold strong to, because we are kaupapa driven, because we're nonprofit. We don't exist to return profits to shareholders. We are accountable to the community that we represent, and we're here to do as much as we can with this technology, with the data that we have been the kaitiaki of, and do as much as we can with that to ensure better outcomes for our people, which includes socioeconomic outcomes. As much as everyone wants to, take a reo class, sometimes they have to work 3 jobs just to put food on the table, eh? And that's the reality I know in the Pacific as well. First thing is, drinking water, then it's a roof over your head, then it's food, then it's probably a job, and then you're thinking about, oh, right, my language. And we have the same situation in Hawaii. It's so expensive to live in Hawaii. Most Hawaiians live outside of Hawaii. And now with this new government that the Americans have elected, things will probably get worse for the Indigenous people that are, marginalized by the Americans. And so whilst we have lost a lot of our physical sovereignty through colonization of the past, centuries, there's an opportunity for us now at this time to ensure that we maintain digital sovereignty, and that we maintain the sovereignty over our languages, over our culture, and over our cultural knowledge. And if we aren't smart about the things we post on Facebook and online and on these other platforms, we will give away our language and our culture to these tech companies only to use against us. And we know what that's like. We've all experienced this already. So if there's one piece of advice I have for everyone is, yeah, sure, the ohana might be on Facebook and you want to engage there, but just think about what knowledge you do share in those spaces, and know that there are tapu places where you can share certain knowledge, and other places where you shouldn't. When you get a DNA test, for example, you're not just sharing your own DNA You're sharing your sister and your brothers and your parents and your grandparents and all the people who come from your motu, right? Who share similarities with you. So we have to think as a community, as a people, not as individuals when we're making decisions about our data and when we're making decisions about what AI technologies to use and how we should use it.
Mahalo, mahalo, mahalo. Just before, I think there's a question from the audience, but what I'll do is I just want to it's just picking actually on your first words, and which frightened me as a facilitator, that I thought those are the only things, that's how you're going to answer my question. You were just going to say, just do it and end it there. So I'm glad that you did elaborate that on more. But I know that Aotearoa, Fiber Fale and Julia, that's what you do. You just do it. So I'll be interested to see your thoughts around just doing it and how you're preparing our community and what your thoughts are about preparing our community for this digital almost divide that we're experiencing at the moment. Aotearoa.
What are we doing? Oh, we're doing a lot. We're doing heaps on it. If I have to specify, one of the big things that I mentioned in our photo in October was that because Julia said, go off into the wilderness and grab the knowledge of all things AI. And then sister set me on this journey. And then now that my whole mouth is full of this AI knowledge, the best thing is not to be IU, not to hold it in, but to share it out. And how we're sharing that is through our future masterclass that's coming next year. Really to share that knowledge that we're having, but also to give that access to not just our people, but to all, about what's happening, what's the horizon. But instead of just going out there and saying AI this, AI over there, AI on the top, more of like, hey, let's talk about AI, but let's look under the cabinet. Let's see what the possibility is and what is happening with this big new wave that's coming out. Another cool thing is for those that have not joined our Cybernesia community on Instagram, which is a community of all us speakers around the whole world in tech. Julia has been giving out 10 scholarships for fiction to learn about AI. So, like, even though we really live to the motto of don't be IU. If we went and learnt about it, we can try and pull the strings so that we can educate and also give the opportunity for those that want to learn, but also get it for free. So we're actively fighting the good fights so that you don't have to pay 15,000 USD to learn this knowledge. We're out there getting this knowledge to provide for our community as well. Along with that, it's through our engagement. Like, we go out into our social platforms to teach about what AI is and how this could be at the forefront of their phones. Like, everything is available for them, but really everyone says, oh, we need them to be here, XYZ. No, we want to meet halfway. So those are a few of the many hundred things that we're doing at Fiber Fale. But before I go and get a bit dusty on this question, the one that you were talking about, I think a big thing to also know about you said Pasifika people, but also so we saw all our questions because I saw a specific region. Me and Julia went on this cool as like Pacific Invest funnel. And when we were talking to a lot of these people around the whole Pacific region, at the moment, AI is something that they're keeping in the eye, but it's not prioritized because they've got other things to worry about. So a big thing for us is, like our brothers have said, we have to do it in order to make it into their radar. Because at the moment, they're still trying to fight the digital divide. A big thing is connectivity. Those beautiful islands need to be able to be connected in order to open into the doors of AI. So I think that was a big learning, but also a big thing that we have to remind, especially as the diaspora. We're quite fortunate, very fortunate here. So if we're going to be pulling our amazing wa'a to the side of AI, we have to remember, once we are settled in the beautiful new world, we need to also pull the rest of us at the same time. Okay, bless.
Okay, so nice message, a good message. Let me, Loata, I'm really keen to hear the questions that are coming from the audience.
Awesome. Kia ora, Ivan. We have a question from Michael. His question to our panelists is, how does a community begin exploring AI/ML with limited resources?
Oh, let's pass that over to Kioni. I think that's a good question. Look at you going. Please don't pick me for this question. I'm really interested, Kioni, your thoughts, and I might hear from look at others because I can see nodding.
Well, we started this journey on the smell of an oily rag, as they say in this country. And so, yeah, limited resources. I mean, I'm going to speak more broadly around, tech. I mean, obviously, there's certain things that we need to solve: access to internet, having a computer, and that's one of the challenges, is that a lot of our people don't have those things. We talk about open source and open data, but who actually benefits from that? Those who have the privilege to have an internet connection, benefit from open source. So there's a lot of inequities there that need to be addressed. But in terms of the limited resources, we've benefited a lot from open source software and open source hardware as well, Raspberry Pis, for example. And so by using those things, on a really low budget, you can start to experiment and play around with any type of technology. So if we want to then talk specifically about AI, machine learning, there's something called Hugging Face. There's a lot of open models there where you can download and run on some cases on cheap hardware, because other clever people out there have made these models more efficient so that they can run on cheap devices. Yeah, so that's one way is look to the open source community. They're actually a really good group of people, and they also now, since learning about this new thing called data sovereignty or Indigenous data sovereignty, they're very much aware of the fact that there is inequity and open doesn't work for everyone. So it's great to see that community, understand more about the data sovereignty that we all know about, that we all sort of grew up with, and being smart about, what we should open and what we shouldn't. But there are a lot of free and easy to access resources out there. Yeah.
I saw some nodding too from Karatiana, and I know that you are one of the founders and set up of Tekite AI, and so I'd be interested in, because I hear all the time people going, great, capture AI, hold on to AI, and make it, because without it you're dead in the water, and people go, cool, how do I do that? So Karatiana, I'd be interested in your thoughts.
Yeah, sure. So Lee Tumutumu and I, so basically Lee challenged me one day. He said, look, bro, you're always talking about AI and making it accessible. Why don't we do something about it? And I was like, oh gosh, yeah, okay. So so I just so we've got a resource, kiti.ai, and it's full of free resources to learn about all various aspects of AI, machine learning, algorithm design. There's all sorts of things there. The biggest challenge we have is trying to keep it updated. And I'm sure I saw an author of another kitty on here just before too, Tukalo kitty. Sorry, I just forgotten the name. But so yeah, it's anyone can just jump on and do this and create those resources. All the big tech companies do offer free AI training in certain areas. Quite often, in my experience, is quite often you have to learn you have to go through some of their marketing propaganda to get the free course, but to keep an open mind about it. So so it's yes, and that was a need. And I fully support Kioni. The open source community is 100%. It's always been good, especially back in the early 2000s when we were facing the digital divide in Christchurch. We looked at the open source community. We looked at the 2020 Trust for recycled computers. But I also think too is just trying to partner up either with Māori groups, with academics. I think there's a lot of genuine people out there who want to help people in the AI area, and I think it's just a matter of trying to build up those networks. So, and also I think you can also do a lot of searching on things like YouTube. Some of the programming languages, you can learn some of the basics for free if you're that way inclined. I've got a lot of cousins who have taught themselves language like Python just basically from watching YouTube videos. So I couldn't do it personally, but people can do it. So I think there's lots of opportunities there.
And I might go back, and I know there's lots of people thinking about this question, but I'm going to go to our audience, make sure the audience get their questions through. Loata, you've got another question from me. That's a really good question, that one, by the way. Keep them coming.
We have a question from Julia's husband, Dylan. In this future of digital sovereignty coupled with an assumed ease of digital access, does our hapu iwi communities benefit from the sharing of their data, our culture, from an individual orohe point of view, outside of the initial values to the problems of learning the reo? But in terms of remuneration and X things, whatever that may look like, any thoughts there?
Yep, I might hand this over to Peter Lucas-Jones, actually, thinking about, from what I think that question was saying is, well, how do you make any money from this, right? And is our iwi and hapu getting any money from this kaupapa? I think that's me. Tell me if I'm wrong, Julia's husband. Peter.
Oh, kia ora. When I do my best to answer questions like this, I'm always talking with my whānau, my hapu, my marae committee, actually, and I'm like going, what is AI? Because that's a question that's often asked. And I try to explain it as AI is simply technology that enables computers and machines to simulate human behavior, learning, problem solving, all these types of things, creativity. But the focus area for Te Reawiritangi o Te Hiko Tika has been language, natural language processing, focusing on speech to text and text to speech. More recently, through our corpus at gathering efforts, linking back to the original question around, how do we gather data? We found that there was a range of pronunciations from older generations that we hold up as being the supreme pronunciation of our language to much younger people that have pronunciation that has been influenced by the dominant language of English around us. So we started to think about how we could develop AI for good. And that AI for good is to staircase people towards a native sound. I always use the maunga versus the maunga, the Moana versus the Moana. And whilst Moana wasn't entirely incorrect, we found some intelligence in that word, but it sounds a bit kawa or sour to my ears, and I'd much prefer Moana. So when we think about the type of examples that we serve people that are learning, we need to serve people with, in my view, the best quality examples. Benchmarking, or how we measure natural language processing today, is largely informed by people that have no background in any Pacific languages. The benchmark is largely acknowledged as if 50% is correct, 50% is good enough. Well, in my view, 50% isn't good enough. And that's what moved us to achieve 92% accuracy. We benchmark that against our gold data set. And for us, those are our kuia and kaumātua that are native speakers of the reo. Most of our native speakers are over the age of 55. And when you think about how young our people die 10 years younger than Pākeas. And so that tells us that we have a window of opportunity because language springs from the life, landscape, and activities of the people. Those activities, of course, are very much connected to the way that we live in our traditional and the application of our traditional knowledge. So the tools that we create, we would love for them to just pay for themselves. Constant maintenance is required to enhance the quality of the tools and the service that we seek to provide. Why do we do that? We want to make sure that we're providing tools that can enhance learning, not take away teachers, not take away kaiakos or replace kuramahita, but instead enhance the way in which people can address things like language trauma. Our pronunciation app Rongo, which at the moment is free, but we're thinking of how do we enhance programs and whether or not there are perhaps people out there that are part of language learning programs that these language learning programs could benefit from.
Because it's
We will never tell someone that they got it wrong. Instead, the way that we've developed our program is it identifies words that are incorrect or phrases that are incorrectly pronounced, and we get people to repeat them by serving them with a quality example of that phrase. And in that way, we enhance and encourage someone, taking into account that many of our whānau that cannot speak te reo feel judged, inadequate, or traumatized in some way, or less Māori, for example, not knowing how to speak fluently. So we see this as a special opportunity to enhance the way that people can acquire the language, staircasing them to a native sound.
And I think and I think you sort of touched on that a little bit around, freemium, but also, there's a grey area, and it feels, and even me saying it makes me feel a bit awkward, is to go, well, are we monetizing the things that make us very special? And you talked about thousands of years of history of language and those sort of things like that, and how to be really careful with ourselves.
Already being monetized, Ivan. So those things are already being monetized. And so if we look at Duolingo also already has Hawaiian language programs, Māori language programs, and they're serving those programs for a price to our people. What I do know is that when our grandparents and parents had the language beaten out of them as children, as part of their first educational experience, I'm sure that none of them thought that the very people that beat the language out of them would be the ones selling the language back as a learning experience for their mokopuna. So I think we must lead in these spaces to ensure that the cultural intelligence that that walks alongside linguistic quality is something that we can serve our learners of the language with. I always prioritize whānau, hapu and iwi, our people of the Pacific, because we have a shared whakapapa. And we're very proud to say that we employ many Māori and Pacific data scientists, developers and engineers, because it's important that we grow our own capability and capacity. And if we can't give our people a job, who's going to give them a job?
Nice.
We must give our own people a go.
I hear you, Peter. It's already happening, so just bump them out of the way with a little nudge of the hip, I think. I've got another question from Loata. Some good questions here. Some very smart audience that will hear that have joined us today.
Yes, a question from Julie. This is related to education. In terms of personal data sovereignty, we freely give our data over to a number of big names or corporations, Facebook, Google, for example. Her question regarding this space, in terms of her concerns, is where is this piece in the puzzle of the growth and safe adoption of AI?
I think it's a really good question for Jacinta to discuss, given that she's a researcher, but she's also a member of the Global Indigenous Data Sovereignty Network, GIDA, and she regularly attends meetings and talks about this stuff all the time. So, Jacinta, I'd be interested in your thoughts.
Oh, thank you, Ivan. Yeah, you and me both, Julie. As a Pacific Data Sovereignty Network, I guess, our key focus is on elevating the rights of Pacific peoples to have access to their own data and, acknowledging there's equity issues in that, there's gaps. And, we really want to make sure that whoever does have data about Pacific peoples uses it right, correctly, there's collective benefit and so on. When it comes to AI, so many alarm bells ring for us. And I guess the first reaction there is to go, do not use it, steer away from it, put your head in the sand, which isn't the answer, as I've heard from all of our AI experts. We shouldn't do that. We should get involved. We should be asking the questions like the question you're asking, Julie. And I guess the concern that we have is that, technological advances are great, but they don't always equate to social advances and advancements. And that's where we want to be cautious. We do want to be able to think about what are some of the risks, particularly around open source AI. what's been wonderful about our speakers is that they've given examples of where you can use AI, but you can also have ownership of all of the data that you're collecting to put into this AI system that you own and the service that you own and so on. And so these are the conversations that we do want to be having. What are some good tools to use that do ensure that it doesn't, you know, your information doesn't go into the ether, that there isn't misappropriation of your data or misuse of it, as we've seen in some examples. And I think the other answer is, as some of our speakers have alluded to, is just do it. We just need to get on and create these systems that are ethical, that do ensure integrity and authenticity of our information. And that's going to take some time, but we do have to start somewhere. And I agree, we all need to be involved in these conversations and ask the questions, be led by experts, and still be a bit cautious. I mean, we're a research company. We still have not found an AI system where we could, because we do a lot of data collection. We collect information all the time. We don't trust a lot of the AI systems because we have personal information, you know, confidential information that we cannot, you know, just put out there. So I think you still have to watch this space, but please don't stop talking about it, because as a data sovereignty network, we have to, you know, be in the know as well.
Aotearoa, I saw a lot of head nodding from you and from the official Pacific University of Entrepreneurship. I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts.
Oh yeah, like I think a big thing that I think a lot, especially with these questions, but also past questions, is altogether, you know, we always talk about where are the resources, we have a fear of this. A big thing that I noticed even before, like, you know, before AI, there was e-commerce. Before e-commerce, there was the year 2000s. You know, everyone had to deliver and then rah, rah, rah. The big thing I learned from learning about this in my time was we can have all the resources, but I think the biggest thing is the change of mindset. You know, if we're going to create these resources and we create them for our people, oh well, sister always taught me this was, you know, we can always go beat all the corporates, beat this, but what about our existing people that are inside these corporates? Are they going to change their mindsets to see, hey, you need to take this pill for the matrix so you can actually see what's happening, like where you're operating? And also, if we're coming from that level and we talk about our communities, we also have to be mindful, if we're going to create 100 to 200 free resources for our communities, we also have to ask the question, what's the difference between a free resource and a paid resource? And will you do the work for the free resource, or will it take an initiative where you have to pay for it, then for you to feel like you need to learn about AI? So it's and I think that's a lot of the work that we do at Whaipawhale is, yeah, we always tell a lot of people to join tech, but a lot of that work of, well, the work of being a self-determined leader is also doing self-work. And with that self-work leads to making critical thinking and also being able to see the difference between why our communities don't find interest in AI compared to people that are hungry to learn about AI. And I think when I went home last week, I was at a whongo at a church, and Julia and I sponsored one of the prizes for the community event. And I asked the question to the community, and I said, because they would be like, oh, let's do common knowledge. And I said, no, we're going to do a really cool question. So my question was, what is AI? And I tell you this, I heard a penny drop. One, it wasn't just because they didn't know the question, but it wasn't the question, but also it was just like that's not everyday conversation on the ground, you know? And while we're trying to build these things, I think a big thing is supporting our communities to see, or not just to prioritize, but have it in the forefront of their mind so that they're aware of the change. Because like we already mentioned in our follow before, we're already behind. So what more can we do, not just by giving resources, but changing mindset?
Well, I can see that Jacinta went to herself now. I thought it was something else. You've just inspired me. Jacinta.
Sorry, I forgot to add that at our last workshop there was, you know, quite a bit of discussion about the benefits of AI and the risks of AI, and what are some of the things that we could do. And so what came through really strongly is that we need to start engaging earlier with these conversations.
Mm.
We need to get Ministry of Education on board as well, and to start talking AI with our children, with our youth who are already digital natives, that we can even go one step further. And so, yeah, I just wanted to share that because that came through really strongly, and that we do need to start education, designing education, not just for them to understand it, but knowing that some of the future job opportunities may also be in this space, and we don't want them to be left behind.
Also, before I head back to Loata, I'm just, because I could see Karaitiana's head nodding lots. And so...
Yeah, I fully support everything that everyone said already. I would just add to that. I think it's our responsibility to start lobbying our politicians as well. I know that when my children were at school, Microsoft were paying for everything. So, I mean, by default, our low decile school started getting all this free, digital and IT equipment. And another school was with Apple. So I think if we can get to our ministers, in particular Minister Collins, if she can understand the community issues, but then play it at a national level. If we can talk about New Zealand sovereignty and the impacts on the Pacific, I think we could start getting some more traction from Te Ao Māori and Pacific audiences' perspectives as well. So, yeah, that was it.
Yeah, I think, God, what I'm hearing in terms of this conversation is just do it, get your hip in and nudge people out the way, come to the front rather than sitting at the pews at the back. For my Pacific Island listeners, you know what I'm talking about. Don't sit at the back, all of the hungover, naughty people at the front. And I think, and to quote Kioni, just do it. Just pick up something and do it. And so let me just say that, in the summit next year, this is not just about the AI Summit, the Pacific Data Sovereignty Network in association with Auckland University and Moana Connect. It's not just about experts and those that are working in the AI space and technology. It's about bringing our community together to understand the things that we need to think about. So this is us saying to you, yeah, it's time to talk about this. It's time for you to come and learn about this stuff. It's time for you to think about it in your context for Rarotongan communities, for Tokolauan communities, for Niuean communities, for communities out there. And we want you to come and bring, and for those that are non-Pacific, come and listen to the things that Pacific people are thinking about, and and bring it to your own community. And so, yeah, so I really hear you, really inspiring me here, this group of people. Let's go back to Loata, who's got another question from our group.
Kia ora, this is a question from Namoi Tuipulotu, and the question is regarding our health sector. In relation to Pacific patient health data, what's appropriate use of AI to help speed up qualitative analytics? Example, do you recommend any tools or steps that still keeps our patient survey data safe, but allows us to support quicker thematic analytics of our patients' responses?
I'm afraid to ask this woman to comment on this, but because I can see a smirk on her face, but I would like you to answer this because I know you've been working in this space a little bit, Jacinta.
Oh, look, again, you're asking somebody who works in the data sovereignty space. I have an element of protection here for our people. And the answer for me is there still isn't one. The answer is no. When you've got, am I right, Karaitiana? Yes, he's not. So I mean, just don't do it at this stage until we can be confident that there is one that is safe.
Anything to add, Karaitiana?
No, I think I'd just also say, I'd also just caution the smart watches. I'm seeing lots of my young cousins wearing these watches which connect their heartbeat and everything up to so they can get cheap medical insurance, and they can get free gym memberships. So just to be cautious that there is a benefit. There's it's not a free watch. It's not a free gym membership, because these big companies get to know a whole lot more about you than what you know. So just to really be careful with the health space with tech.
Peter, I can see that that look of, I think you're going to say something, and I'd like you to say it.
More recently, we find a lot of our whanaunga, a lot of our relatives very interested in our history. in our genealogy. And some people have found a fascination in having DNA tests. And I think Keone talked about it briefly earlier. But when our whānau do that, I think it's also important to understand that health insurance companies also like to purchase data. Not every company lives a long life. Sometimes companies find themselves on unstable ground, moving into liquidation, and sometimes bankruptcy. And they're left with a lot of bills. And there's nothing quite as valuable with the DNA as the DNA data of natural groupings of people. So Keone mentioned earlier that when we have a DNA test, we're sharing DNA with all our relatives. Targeted medicine is certainly a priority for certain data science research groups. I tend to talk about natural language processing because that's my focus. But when we think about targeted medicine and precision medicine for people of Polynesian descent, we can be mindful, I think, that we sometimes find in our families a predisposed condition that seems to appear. Not all families find this in their whakapapa line, but some do. When insurance companies have access to that sort of information, they can rule out claims perhaps that come from groups that have DNA characteristics that they find unsuitable to meet the criteria for medical insurance or payouts for certain types of things. So I would agree with what Dr. Malaitongia Jacinta has said and Dr. Karaitiana, because these are areas I think we must give some consideration to, because in the future, our mokopuna could be in a position where they have that data weaponized against them. So I think it's important for us to understand the impact of the decisions that we're making at this transitional time. AI is new, but technology is not new to our people. Our people sailed here from Hawaii, navigating by the stars, all the way to Aotearoa. So whilst these specific technologies might be new, I think that we have some innate abilities to very critically analyze risks and opportunities. Balancing those, however, is going to be important as the years turn into decades. Kia ora.
Kia ora. And hand up, Keone.
Yeah, I want to offer a counter a question about the health and AI. Look, there's no AI without the data. If you have a need to solve for your community that needs to revolve around this patient data, I mean, as long as you are collecting the data and you're storing it in a place that you trust, it can be anywhere, but as long as there's trust there, let's just be honest and practical. Amazon, AWS would fall over if your data wasn't secure there. Do you know what I mean? Because AWS provides services to the governments of the world and to many companies that rely on the confidentiality of the data that's there. So as long as you're in control of the infrastructure that is piping your data, if you know where the hard drives are and you can say who does and doesn't have access to that hard drive, then you are in control of that data. Yes, we much rather store our things in Maori-owned data centers. They haven't built them yet, but I hear they're working on it, right? But until then, we have to be practical because we still have to put food on the table or solve our health crisis, what have you. So as long as you're in control of that patient data, that's the first key step. Then the next one is, are there AI tools out there that can do, I see thematic analysis. I'm assuming this is text data, patient responses, perhaps people, maybe speaking and you're getting that transcribed. There are tools available that you can pay for. And because you're paying for it and because of the way that business and capitalism works, you can ensure that no one else could access that data to use for other means besides your own. You might have to read through the terms and conditions. You might need to get a lawyer to read it, but these things do exist. If you are very cautious, there are ways in which you could run your own large language models on your own hardware, but then it gets a bit more complicated and maybe more expensive. But there are ways to do this. So at least you can start the analysis, because maybe then you need to do a lot more research. And if you've started that in a way that you trust the access to the data and the tools that you've used, you might be able to get some funding to help to support further research in this. So I wouldn't say stay away 100%. I would say just be very clever, but ultimately ensure you have sovereignty over that data and you know who has access and who doesn't, because there is no AI without the data. And then find the tools and the people or companies that you might trust to at least help you on that journey. Maybe you don't trust them 100%. So maybe you can take a subset of the data that is maybe less tapu or less valuable, and then you can experiment with that whilst, making sure the rest of your data is safe. So we have to be practical, and it's just it's knowing all the risks and benefits and just trying to be as smart as we can in when we use these tools and how we use them.
And I do note at our workshop in October, one of the elements one of the key themes that came across was, or one of the messages really, was that AI has bias. And I think that one of the elements, right, there's storage and there is access, and I completely understand that. But I'm suggesting with health, it's often the interpretation and analysis of the response, right, to that, which is, because, I can say, well, we say within South Pacific here, and we're the people of the South Pacific, that each one of our tribes and each one of our villages and each one of our individuals have a different intention or understanding of what health means to them. And so, which brings me to my point, is that your questions, Aotearoa, Peter, Graitiana, Kioni, Jacinta, you were all talked about. Actually, we need to start having these conversations. We need to start to be the leaders of that interpretation and that analysis, as opposed to saying, hey, don't do that because we can't. Well, actually, no, I want to be involved. I want to become an AI expert. We've got to start now. So I really like that conversation, those messages that you're sending.
You brought up a really good point. Even I want to jump in because you mentioned bias, and I can't believe none of our expert panels brought that up, especially, and that I think is the biggest risk with using any existing AI in the health sector, is actually the bias, is that these language models are trained on predominantly Western data. So if we want to do thematic analysis on Indigenous, on our Pacific people, none of those models would even get what we're on about, right? Because they don't know us, and they shouldn't. And that's where we have to come together as a Pacific people, because collectively we have enough data where we could build models that could provide the right type of thematic analysis on the data of our own communities, and we could use that for the benefit of our people. So absolutely, that is perhaps the biggest risk with most of these tools, is they know nothing about us, and that's why they're trying really hard to learn more about us.
Yep, and I've heard this comment from a lot of some of my elders actually, that said that's our advantage, is we know everything about them, but they know nothing about us. Okay, so I'll go back to Loato. I'm just taking note that it's 22 minutes before the closing of this, and I want to make sure we've got 5 minutes to do our lotu and have a prayer before we leave, because we started with a prayer, we've got to end with a prayer. So I'll go to Loato.
Cool. Another question from Dylan. Understanding the context from what Nu'uali'i shared around our communities only know what they know. How do you think we, the builders, creators, or the already converted, can increase positive awareness and engagement within our Indigenous communities with AI?
We've had a little bit of a discussion about that, around going, actually, how do we grow the knowledge base of this? But I'm really interested to expand on that. It sounds like the audience wants to hear more. Look at this interacting. It's great. So let's go with Graitiana.
Okay. So just from my personal experience, so one of my marae in the South Island is very rural, and it was only just last year we had internet connection installed. Having Wi-Fi there kind of ruined the whole point of going there. But that was the big question where my community said, well, we don't want AI. We're scared of AI. Why do we want it? But then we very quickly found out that AI could be used to help us with the ocean rising with global warming. And we were lucky enough to team up with a Crown Research Institute who were using AI to help us. And so that created more discussions. It's like, oh, hell, so we've got mussel farms out there, and we've got these things are happening. And so, yeah, so we had people coming in and using AI, and so that inspired the community who were once kind of very anti-tech to start saying, oh, actually, we can actually get some jobs. We can create employment for our youth here. We don't have to just create the jobs on mussel farms. We can create some jobs with AI. And so I mean, that's just one way of increasing our understanding and using being the builders of AI is actually bringing up our next generation to contribute back to our villages and back to our communities.
Aotearoa? The clap, the addition.
So if I'm going to think about creators and builders, if I have to go back in my life as a developer, the one big thing about developers and those that are at the back is they actually don't even know what actually, like they haven't been taken out of their environment to see what actually is impacted in the current environment for our communities. Like in their minds, like for us, every day is a ticket. If it's not a ticket, it's a bug. If it's not a bug, it's another problem. Repeat, repeat, repeat. It's our whole entire system. So in order for them to buy in and actually see it, we have to remove them, but also not one, remove them from the environment, but two, actually get to see what their products are actually, or what products they're building, the products that they're building, how their solutions are impacting in the communities. And so in order for them to fully understand or help the community have a positive awareness of it, they need to have experience in that. It's like a developer. You can't develop if you don't have experience as a developer. So we can't expect them in the building area to be aligned to what's happening if they don't experience it. Our big thing is they need to want to. And in order to bring that awareness to them is to bring the companies or the companies or the environments they're nesting in to have the shared vision. Because Julia always says it too. It's the top of the head that rots. So if the top of the head that rots, that means all the stink comes at the bottom, and they won't even care about anything about what's happening, and they won't be positive because they'll be angry because they're building. And two, they'll be like, "Oh, it's all right, you're buying my solution, so we can go X, Y, and Z." So the funnel of that whole entire tangent is the leaders that create spaces for creators. They need to understand wherever they move as well. Like but in order for communities or in order for them to see to create positive, not just positive awareness, but just project amazingness to our communities that can make them feel, oh, yep, this is it. They just need to, there needs to be, it can't be just within work hours. They have to also be passionate into the communities that we're in. Like, it's amazing how it took me until I left corporate to just see, oh my gosh, like I've taken the matrix pill. Oh my gosh, here it is. Like, how do we get more of these people to be aligned to the mission? And I think it's a big thing is getting them aligned to it. And if I go back to our community, for them to feel positive about it, they also need to, a big thing for it is they need to experience the knowledge that has been given. Well, they need to experience the knowledge of AI. That's really what it is. You got to give them the experience and the knowledge and also relationships. You can't just go to our communities, teach them a session about AI, and then you biffle off. That's not how it works, fam. If you're going to come in, you've got to come in for a long time. It's a good time, but a long time. Because we don't work like that. Like, it's a balancing act between the two. Can it happen? Of course, but both need to be at the shared alignment. Also, they have to also have time and resources as well. Another thing is, you can't just come to our community because it's a volunteer day.
Yeah.
You need to come out of office hours.
Malo, I think there's a I can hear a theme here. Nudge the hip, put the hands up, push your way to the front, just do it. I can feel that. That Peter.
Oh, kia ora. I wanna tautoko what Nuali'i said, because if it's not a ticket, if it's not a bug, it's a stand-up meeting, and when it's not a stand-up meeting, it's a sprint planning session. And it is a cycle. It is a cycle. But when we're working with those of our people that understand how important trust and accountability is, it means more than that. And it means more than working 9 to 5 or whatever it is, because we know that we are accountable to our communities for the work that we do when we go to the pack and save or the pack and wave, and we see cousin, auntie, uncle, and our families. When we go to the marae, when we go to church, we are held accountable, and we are often asked questions, valid questions, and we have a very practical way that we've developed to respond to questions, but also take on advice. Because I think it's important for us as people that work in this field to remember data is found in the walking repositories that we call our whānau hapu and iwi. There is no data science without the data. And I think the way that we have been raised as Māori and Pacific Island people, we have a respect for traditional wisdom. We often call that data today, and how data and the people who the data actually belong to is probably more important than the scientists that are working with the data, because they understand the data. And like some key points that I wanted to raise is, like, when we talk about data sovereignty, it's important for us to reflect what that means in our traditional approach to managing kōrero tuku iho. When we talk about a kaitiaki data license, we're not talking about some big flash legal term. We're talking about documenting the practice that our people have been applying for hundreds, if not thousands of years, whether it's the knowledge associated with ocean currents, whether it's the knowledge associated with the moon cycles, whether it's the knowledge associated with plantations, when to plant, when to weed, when to tend to the gardens, and of course, when and how to harvest. This is all information that I think our industry, our data science industry, does not have a lot of respect for. And I'm reminded of Western society's disrespect for the environment. And today, we have climate change as a result. And I can't imagine what the future will be like if we continue down a similar pathway with data. And so when I think about how we can work with one another, I'm always talking about language, because to me, language is a key to knowledge, and our languages are related. So the problems that we might define could have shared benefit when we think about the solutions that we could develop. And a multi-language model for Polynesian languages, Pacific languages, in the reality of my mind is that this is something we could all share in. And so I'm always advocating for this, because I see it as a way to collaborate with other Indigenous communities, and I see it as essential for effective solution development using technology to enhance what we already know in our communities, drawing on those strengths and actually enhancing them in a way that help us to address problems like climate change, for example, or climate resilience, or water resilience in drought situations. Those are just some of the whakaaro. Engari, koia tēnā.
Okay. So I think one final question from the audience. I'm just noting that it's 10 minutes to go in this fantastic. I know you'd want to stay for hours, but we won't stay for hours. I'm sure you've heard enough from me already tonight. So, Luata.
Kia ora, Ivan. The final question, I guess it's quite good to come to the end. Is there a date confirmed for the AI Summit in 2025? What's next?
So there's no date set for, there's no date, or it's on this time at this particular day at this particular time. We're looking to have the AI Summit really connected with Tech Week. That's happening in May next year. It seems like a really good time to leverage off some of the existing sort of energy that is around that element. And but at the moment, it's just we're sitting at a sort of a to be confirmed approach. We want to be in a position where we can confirm that hopefully before the end of the year. Actually, it's something that we want to do. But yeah, so probably May, I think, this next year. But like I say, not confirmed yet. Jacinta?
Yes, I've just dropped it into the chat.
Oh.
Definitely Tech Week, 19 to 25 May. We're just checking availability of Dewdrop Event Centre that week. So we will come back to you.
Yeah, and as I say, the more people, the better. Just probably won't want me to say that, but I know that our first get together as a Pacific community around data sovereignty, we were expecting 100 and 250 turned up, and then the next one we're expecting 200 and then 350 turned up. So let's keep the numbers going up, because, like I say, and like all the panelists have talked about. Before I close with the Lotu, I just want to summarise what we've spoken about today. And I actually, when I reflect on the conversation, I think of a common ancestor of us all, and that ancestor was a demigod named Maui. And one of the phrases that I hear about Maui is they often say, "Tu te manawa Maui." How do you stand with the heart of Maui? And when people talk about Maui as this common ancestor that we have, they often talk about cheekiness. They talk about not being afraid. They talk about possibly at times breaking the rules. I know nobody asked him to slow down the sun or hop in the waka with his brothers. He just did it. And reflecting on the conversation that we've had here, you're all of our panelists are reflecting that. You're reflecting, actually, just do it. Just try something new, explore new opportunities, be brave, use the hip to knock, to move to the front, put your hand up from the back and yell out. When you're given something and it feels a little bit scary, why not just do it? Because we have the safety of thousands of years of history that back us up, and and a common ancestor which teaches us that our greatest achievements have been on breaking the rules every now and then. And so what I can hear from all of these people in this room is you look like rule breakers, and what it has turned out to be is it's been an opportunity. You've worked through challenges, and it's been an opportunity and growth for our people in our community in the South Pacific. So I want to take the opportunity once again to thank you all. What you've spoken about today has really inspired me and made me really excited. But I'm sure, based on some of the comments that I'm seeing and the questions, it's also really inspired and grown some thinking in our community and the people that are listening. Before I end today, look, I just want to remind people, I think it's on the commentary, is that, we really encourage you to give us feedback, particularly if that feedback is about the MC and it's only positive, then we delete everything else. Please, give us feedback so we can make these webinars more open and getting more of our people thinking about different things and growing our community. And I want to acknowledge the panelists again for their time, their energy, and for trying to fill all those years of knowledge and experience into 1.5 hour web panel with Ivan and the community.